How
I
you
know.
wanted to go.
I already forgot what I was gonna say.
Okay.
All right. Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming out to Black Swan. This is another Black Swan production coming at you. We have
Okay, so my name is Richard Charles Theophilus Straughter. My full name. And
Richard
Charles
Charles
Theophilus
Theophilus.
Straughter.
Theophilus.
Theophilus, like
Theophilus.
Is
and
that wait a
I'm
minute?
giving you that
Is
full
that
name. I never use that, but yeah,
that's
that's what's on my birth certificate.
so welcome to Black Swan. We have with us today Richard Charles Theophilus
Theophilus.
Theophilus
Theophilus Straughter.
Straughter.
Yeah.
I call him Rich. I like his name, Rich. You know, it makes me feel rich calling him Rich. So we are wealthy over here. But is that Greek? Or?
I do believe that German Straughter um, is some derivative of Germany. It has some origin from there. My grandmother, she had the crest for our name as well.
The
We lost
crest.
that. Yeah, it was a crest, like an emblem, that we had on our wall in our home, when I was growing up.
Oh, so you from
So
royalty then?
it almost made me feel that way. It's just knowing that. From my understanding, I think families can also design their own crest. And I think ours was because when I went to look up for our name, see it, but for other names I did see. So, it's all about, the legacy that you leave and create. So most likely they created their own crest as well.
So where you from?
I'm born and raised right here in Miami, Florida.
Born and raised in Miami. From Miami, so
Yeah.
what was
So
it like growing up in Miami?
oh man, boy, it's very contradictory to what you see in movies, man. It's not the same. Miami, my Miami wasn't the paradise that you seen, Miami Vice and all those other movies. I stayed, uh, I lived at least 10 minutes away from where we're filming this right now, and that's like 10 minutes away from the ghetto. You know, uh, I went to mostly all inner city schools. Despite what every other young black male got into, I pretty much got into the opposite. You know, everyone, coming off the porch was into football. It was, they had to be an athlete. To me, it just felt like just a bunch of running around and sweating. I had no interest in that whatsoever. But I knew that there was something in me that I felt as if I needed to create, and if I wasn't creating, I was destroying. you know, it was a blessing and a curse. My mom, she would stop me from breaking stuff down. I probably would have pursued computer repair if
Okay.
because majority of the things that I broke down and tried to assemble back and put together were electronics.
Wait, so you a techie type?
Uh, I think I'm verging over into it. I'm merging into it. The tech world is something that I had an interest in, but I was deprived of that going to inner city schools. We had an administration that wanted us to take the FCAT. This was during the years of 2003 to 2007, probably a little longer than that. But yeah.
What's the FCAT?
So FCAT down here in Florida is this
It's like the
whole.
GED, right?
Don't quote me on it, but it's exactly what it is. Really, a certificate of completion. You attended, and you probably passed all of your courses, but you did not pass the FCAT, so you would get a certificate of completion. Yeah.
Oh,
So the origin of this whole topic, you know, I said that it pretty much deprived a lot of us of the education that we would uh, possibly have wanted. Architecture was one thing that I wanted to do. That was one interest, and I also wanted to do auto body another thing is as far as pushing creative outlet, computer repair.
Well, let me
So,
back you up
mm,
because you said architecture was one of the things that you wanted to do from high school, you know,
uh, well, actually from middle school.
from middle
Yeah.
school. You see,
Hmm.
the thing is, this is surprising to me because I didn't even know about architecture until into my 20s.
Mm.
So I also noticed going through architecture school that there's not a lot of brothers or sisters in the architecture programs. So how is it that you found out about it so early, and how did it come to you to where it was something that you wanted to do?
All right. So, I have to give it to Alapata Middle School down here in Miami, Florida. The program that I was in there, it was a magnet program. Now this was a very diverse program. It's probably half black, half Hispanic, half African American, half Hispanic. And I say Hispanic, and because it's a very vast and general amount of different Hispanic cultures that were there with me. We had a teacher by the name of Mr. Henry Markham, and he introduced us to 1 and 2 point perspective
Mm,
uh, through teaching us graphic arts, and that was the magnet program there that we attended. So we attended 2D and 3D graphic arts at their magnet program at Alapata Middle, and through one dimensional, I'm sorry, one perspective, 1 and 2 point perspective, I realized that okay, wow, this is how architects, create renderings for their buildings.
mm,
At that point in time, I didn't even know what a rendering was, but
right.
yeah, I knew that this is something that architects did in order to display plans that they created for uh, buildings, homes, or whatever it is that they drafted. So, with this being said, I learned a bit of the history of art because that was required of us, taking art. And I really didn't like the fact that artists weren't given their flowers, and like many people aren't given their flowers while they're here. I loathe the fact of just, pretty much looking at my overall life and knowing that my work probably would not have uh, been seen in its full potential by the eyes of the world until I'm deceased. You know, uh, just recently there was a piece of art that Basquiat did. And it
Mm,
sold for several $1 million in an auction. And I said, wow, you know, I know he's probably kicking and punching in his grave if it's possible. You know, I just pretty much wanted to do something that had an effect now, and monetary wise as well. You know,
right.
uh, when you're doing something for passion, I know I think about how much money you're receiving for it, but a lot of artists that I know struggle as well. You know, and coming from where I come from, struggling was never an option for me. You know, I wanted to do the complete opposite. I wanted to strive, and I wanted to do better than what my parents had for me. You
Mm.
know, so
So where did your motivation come from?
uh, well, it was just pure creativity. Honestly, I've always knew that I've had the capability to design. You
Mm,
know, and there was just some type of token that I received. Chemically, shot of serotonin, endorphin, or dopamine, correct for that.
adrenaline rush, huh?
Yeah, I got a rush from it. So and every time I completed a piece, I always felt as if, you know, in a sense, not physically, but I gave birth to something. This is mine, and it's something that I could, look over and I can adore, and gave me a sense of purpose. So yeah.
Let me ask you this. So when you first decided that you wanted to go to architecture school,
Mhm.
did you have any pushback, any difficulties before trying to enter into architecture school?
There actually wasn't any pushbacks getting in. My world and my environment changed after that, I could say. You know, the same diverse, friendly faces that I had, who we embraced one another, and we pretty much pushed one another along. Uh, Me and you had a conversation about this prior, and I think this is one of the reasons why I connected with you so well. Me and you both noticed, the interest in what we do and uh, what we are developing and learning.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, there's no sense of collaboration after the point of, well, when I was in high school, when I was in middle school. I remember we would group up around each other's tables and just, oh wow, yeah, I like how you did this, I like how you did that. Well, what do you think about this? We would have conversations. We would, you know, in college that was completely
Non-existent.
non-existent. Exactly. You know, so I
And the
mean,
thing that's funny is that architecture is such a collaboration or collaborative field,
it
and the
can be,
people who
yes.
come in to try and study the architecture or to be architects, they don't want
Mm-hmm.
to collaborate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was almost like a I don't even want to say a competition, but I was going to say a silent competition, but it was like, everyone was all for one and one for self. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a bit different, and you know the feel of it just became different. It just became kind of mechanical. There was the passion was still there. The
Mm-hmm.
passion was still there. However, gratification, so I had to try to get it out of my mind. Later on in my life, I learned more about delayed gratification instead of instant gratification. That kind of is the opposite of me getting my flowers now.
Mm-hmm.
Never discouraged me to sit there and feel that I would still push on and do greater things.
So, is this how it was going through architecture school?
Yes, the 2 years that I spent trying to attain my degree through design courses, it was exactly how I worded it. It felt that way. You would have certain people who it clicked. We admired one another's work, and we complimented, but it was never a whole class collaborative thing. It was never that. Even in projects where we would have to work in groups, it would feel like a little, you know, off. And for the life of me, I had no idea why. Even as we're talking right now, it's like usually sometimes something would click and it would dwell on me. Oh wow, maybe it was this. To this day, I cannot think of why it was not as collaborative as I would thought it would have been.
Right.
You know.
Now, I was speaking to one of my professors,
Mm.
and what they said is normally you don't get the people who are passionate about the subject
Mm.
until later on when your fourth, fifth years, when they've decided that this is actually what they want to do. Because when you're in your first 2 years, you have individuals who are just trying, I'm trying it out,
Yeah.
sort of thing. They want to see if it's something that they want to do. You have individuals that I've spoken with that they got into architecture because they think that it's going to make them a lot of money. And I believe if that's what you're here for, and just for money, there's other fields that can make you so much more money
Yeah.
than it does in architecture.
I kind of thought that too, but for me, like I said, as long as I have a creative outlet, I'm good. Architects aren't necessarily hurting either, you know.
Right.
You
They're
know,
not hurting, but they also a lot of times aren't respected.
yeah, yeah. But it's kind of hard not to say that uh, you could drive past a building and just don't notice it.
Right.
Even if it isn't the slightest bit appealing to you, that's a landmark. You know.
But let me ask you this. You can drive past a building that's beautiful and you're going to admire it. But how many people actually think about I wonder who was the architect who designed this building.
Well, to me, I think that's just enough. My gratification is just the overall completion of
Mm-hmm.
what I do. Uh, I know what effect that it'll have on people.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, to be famous is not the goal for me. You know, to sustain myself and to have something that that I do it with passion,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't feel like work to me. You know, that was something that I remember hearing as a child. You know, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life,
Right.
and I think that's absolutely true. You know, I know people who just utterly just hate their jobs. You know, they're on the brink of quitting every week. You know, and how is that a way to live? You know, you're going to
Right.
do that for 40 years. I believe I could do architecture for the rest of my life, even
Mm-hmm.
if it's something that is uh, linked to architecture or you know just slightly remote from it. I could do that for the rest of my life without retiring.
Well, let me ask you this. All right. Do you believe that here in the U.S. is one of the best places to practice architecture?
Now, once I got into it, you know, maybe I would have been interested to study in Greece or study abroad somewhere, you know. But there is pieces of work here that are mind blowing, like Frank Gehry, uh, 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 Frank Lloyd Wright, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Falling Water, you know, which
Mm-hmm.
every creator, and I'm going to say creator, I'm not going to use artist because within our field, uh, a lot of people mistaking us for artists. You know, what we
So you don't
do,
believe that an architect is an artist?
I do, I do. You know, however, art can be impractical.
Mm. His architecture is practical.
Architecture has to be because this is serious business. This is a liability as well. You
Mm-hmm.
know, a piece of art has no responsibility whatsoever, other than to uh, trigger your emotions
Mm-hmm.
and your feelings about it. You know, if we did this with our line of work, you know, we could end up with a lot of casualties.
No, definitely.
Right. And you know, this is why the study of this is so important with art. You know, it's also said that art is not taught. Architecture is. This is nothing that we could just pick up. You know, structures is a very imperative part of architecture. So um, we have to know exactly, you know, the weight and stress and load that the things that we build take.
But let me ask you this question. If you could practice architecture anywhere in the world without any hindrances, without them saying, oh, you need a license or you have to get this amount of more experience, if you were free to practice architecture anywhere in the world, where would it be?
I would say now it would be here. Now after experiencing everything that I've experienced and what I know, it
Mm,
would be here. Uh, for one and two reasons. Um, so here in South Florida, here in Florida in general,
hmm
uh, uh, we have a natural disaster, which is hurricanes,
Right.
right? On the West Coast, we have earthquakes. On the far west coast and the southeastern end here in Florida and other areas that are affected by the hurricanes, we are expected to build to a certain standard, to a certain code,
hmm
that will withstand uh, Category 5 hurricanes, and you know our partners over on the other end, magnitude of whatever earthquake. You
hmm
know, so and I say that because I feel comfortable that we've already had the conversation of liability, and how important that is. You know, I will never take what art that I know that 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 I have, and put that aside from my work. I will integrate it as much as I can, with it being functional and practical.
So you believe that here in Miami, or you just mean South Florida in general, saying all the way up to Fort
Florida in general.
Lauderdale, Palm
Florida
Beach,
in general.
Florida in general.
Mhm.
So you're interested in all of Florida in terms of the architecture field. Do you believe that? Well, let's focus real quick on Miami lately. I know there's a lot of things happening in Orlando, a lot of things happening in Tampa Bay, but here in Miami, do you believe that with all the recent development that's happening, do you believe this as an opportunity for architects, or do you believe that the developers are not paying any mind to the architects?
Well, if we're talking about recent development, uh, everything that has already been planned for is already said and done. So we have to get our foot in the door for what's next. Um, there's still a lot of land on the eastern end of Florida that has not even been tapped into. Some of it is um, protected by our wildlife reserve.
Mm.
So we bother not to tamper with that. But uh, whatever there is left to build on, um, I really don't feel as if there is any competition. There's a lot of people who already have themselves established, and they're on contracts. But the world is a big place, so there's plenty of people who come in and out of Florida, especially Miami. You know, from all places all over the world. So there's chances where you could possibly get a project or uh, start your own development with the client somewhere else.
Hmm.
So the competition aspect of it, I really don't see it.
Or what does the future of architecture look like to you?
With different softwares, you have different capabilities.
Right.
The more you know a software, the more you work on it, you could break loopholes and how the 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 software works, or how is it you need your building to come out
Hmm.
with how you know how to use the software. However, I've noticed with uh, programs like Revit, there's limited creativity. However, there is a big pro within it because it allows you to, while you're building, showing you and also giving you restrictions on what you can and cannot do
Hmm.
structurally. So you're not going to get that in programs like AutoCAD, SketchUp, and I don't know much of Rhino, but maybe Rhino. You know.
I've seen some people do some amazing things in Revit in
Okay.
terms of design. My issue is with this minimalistic mentality. I would think that it would be cheaper to build the house, but in terms of if it's being, that's in my mind,
Mm.
cheaper to build the house, but yet these houses cost a lot more.
Okay. That all depends on the complexity of the design. From what I understand, I'm aware of what type of homes and buildings that you're referring to. They're the homes that you would see, these precast walls that are cantilevering and aren't connected to anything, or aren't linteling another wall holding up the ceiling that's cantilever. Those are relatively cheap to build because it's precast. Um, However, with all of this neo-futuristic and other modern type of buildings, yes, structurally they are more difficult to build, right? Because you need material to withstand the complex design, right? Uh, but really, what I believe is going to be the future and is the future is Leeds architecture.
Leads.
Leeds architecture, yeah. Leeds architecture is sustainable architecture. Buildings made from uh, recyclable materials, you
Hmm.
know, uh, as well as
That's like trash.
yeah, hmm pretty much. I recently read into aircrete. It's like a less heavier concrete that's
Hmm.
made with foam and concrete mix or something like that. Uh, you have hempcrete. You have different materials that are being made. Uh, I've seen tiles that are made from resin of rice. It's a lot of different things. It's amazing the things that they're coming up with. Biomimicry, right?
Biomimicry.
Biomimicry, right? So it's like not exactly a style, but it's usually the adaptation of things that are in nature, and we apply them to everyday things like within our innovation or our designs, you
Mm.
know. So things that, let's say, for instance, trees, right? How with photosynthesis they store energy, right?
Mm.
So the same way we have solar panels, and the sun rays, the UV rays hit the solar panels, and it stores energy to for a house or a building. With Zaha, she got most of her later designs came from the images of cells, right?
Cells
So
is in the cells that are in our bodies.
yeah, the cells that are in everything,
Right.
the cellular structure of anything,
Right.
right?
Right.
So under a microscope, you can see exactly how these things are contoured and the patterns of them, right? I don't know if it would make sense, but if you were to look at any of those pictures, right, a cell within itself is a structure.
Right.
So, where me and you had a conversation about aesthetics versus functionality, right? This pretty much intertwines the two. It brings something to the eye that isn't usual. It sticks out like like a rose in concrete. You're gonna see it from anywhere. Zaha Hadid has a building down here in Miami.
Right.
That no one down here has ever seen anything like that. If we didn't have access to the internet or magazines or television, and we were just blind to the rest of the world, this would be something that would just seem almost alien like. She is also one of I would say uh, mentor. You know,
Zaha Hadid has or was a great mind and prolific in terms of being a visionary.
mm-hmm.
I definitely admire her work, her mind, and also Calatrava. If you've heard of Calatrava,
No, I haven't.
Calatrava is a Spanish architect
Mm-hmm.
who he also experiments with these curves, is what you're saying. But if we're going back to Zaha Hadid,
Mm-hmm.
and you said this biomimicry in regards to architecture, I would say that some of the great
Biomorphism and biomimicry.
biomorphism
Mm-hmm.
and biomimicry, I would say that the most or that people or the greatest architects take their ideas from nature because nature is the greatest version of architecture that we can see. And so, therefore, if we're going to produce anything that is of greatness, we would need to look at our own environment anyway, and not just the environment that we build, but the environment that nature creates around us. Because a lot of times we get rid or destroy this nature in which we have grown from. We need to look to it in order to get to the next level. And you see some of this, with people in like a Milano. In Milano, you have this building where it has greenery coming out of it.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to create architecture that still is able to produce the natural agriculture in which we see. And they want people to get back to nature, and they're trying to create and meld the nature and the humans, which is if we're separated, we're supposed to be together.
Right.
We're not supposed to be separated at all. But yet, if we were to look at this in terms of when we went through architectural history, you saw some of the architecture from people thousands of years ago. They didn't have all of these programs that we have these days, and yet
certainly didn't. Yeah.
Yet their architecture, I would beg to say that their architecture was better than a lot of what we built today.
Yeah, in a sense. Yeah.
Is even some of the what we consider to be primitive people,
Mm.
their thought process of how or utilizing architecture mixed with nature in order to combine a way of harmony.
Mm.
I believe that we need to get back to that in terms of architecture.
Yes, yes. I agree with you. I really do. And not to cut you off, but yeah, that's a part of Leeds as well, because before Leeds, we dealt with structures that were built and have some type of effect on our ecosystem.
Mhm.
You know, part of building with sustainable materials is uh, it's a benefit to the world. You
Mhm.
know, a lot of the materials that are in uh, building cannot be recycled. You know, so with leads, you're gonna try to make sure to to the highest extent, you're gonna try to build a building or create the structure with. Leads is the organization that determines, uh, you know, exactly how much of it is or isn't.
Mhm.
So there's tiers of lead certifications. So you got from silver to gold, basically.
Well, let me ask you this as we close. I need to know. So, where do you see yourself going in the future with architecture?
Well, as of right now, really, I'm into the design aspect in general. I'm venturing into the 3D printing world, you
Mm-hmm.
know, which is something that took very great interest because one of my original childhood interests. Uh, it's kind of funny to me, Legos, modeling and constructing, pretty much just a figment in your imagination into you know a figure. So
Let me say something. One of my first architectural professors, uh, with great imagination, told me to look at the Lego movie if I wanted to see how things were done. Now, a lot of people, your face said it all. A lot of people don't tell you, they're not thinking to look at cartoons.
mm-hmm.
But yet, of course, an architect, a great architect, I believe, has to be able to see things differently than other people. And if you realize that as children, we are the greatest architects because our imaginations are so huge. So people say you have an overactive imagination, but we need to have a bit of that imagination from children because we used to build forts, build Legos, all these different things. And even if they, draw something, there would be no limit to their imagination. Oh, this is a cheese planet, or ice cream, or all types of
Bubblegum
things.
dragon,
Bubblegum dragons.
something
Oh,
like
these shoes,
yeah.
these are flying shoes.
Mhm.
Have you seen flying shoes so far? No, you haven't seen flying shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone wants everything to be practical, but sometimes we can make the impractical practical if we believe in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not looking to cut you off and saying, but where I see the future of architecture is the people who desire to develop and design, to design and develop, because the developers, I believe, are not looking out for the architects. They're looking out for their pockets, how
Of
much
course.
money they're going to make.
Of
And that's
course.
great, but yet you have people like Zaha Hadid, who has an architecture team,
Mm-hmm.
who they are so famous now that people look to, oh yeah, I want Zaha Hadid uh, architects to create my building.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, are there many architects out there where, they want these architects to just go crazy with the imagination of, to build this building? No, they want it to look nice, but they're thinking about their pockets. But yet, if the architect learns both ends, I believe that we'll see some amazing things come from architects.
I agree. I agree. I can't agree with you more. Yeah, I mean, there has to be an integration. You know, like I said, you know, with passion comes great work.
Right.
You love what you do. That love is transferred into what you create.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, and it comes down to uh, funding and the greed of people. You're not really concerned or have empathy with uh, the project itself.
Right.
You're just trying to push out a product.
I definitely appreciate you being here. Is there anything you would like to say to the audience in
Uh,
closing?
Last minute, oh, yeah, man, just follow your dreams and let your passion lead you. As I mentioned earlier, whatever you do in life, you know, uh, as far as work or any compensation will never feel like a job. And that'll be the best thing for you.
All right. Well, I definitely appreciate you, Rich. Thank you for coming out to Black Swan, and we have some more in store for you. Just like, comment, subscribe, and also, if you have any criticism, leave it in the comments too. Y'all have a wonderful day.